Welcome back. I've got Scott and Tammy on the line. How are you two?
Oh, doing great. Nice to be here,
Yeah,
Michael.
pretty
Awesome.
fantastic. Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. Great to have you. Really looking forward to this conversation. So why don't you share a little bit about yourselves and the organization, and then we'll jump into this really important conversation.
Scott, do you want to go first?
You go first.
All right. I'm Tammy Rogers.
Age before beauty.
Oh, thanks so much. I am the co-founder and co-CEO of a company called BecomeMore Group. And what we really do is we help individuals, teams, and organizations start here and like say, where do you want to go? How do you want to get there? And we work with them to kind of step in, become more in any way that really makes sense to them.
It's
Yeah, and
important. The word.
yeah, yeah. And I'm Scott Burgmeyer. I'm the other and most important CEO of Become More Group.
Smart Alec.
That's why it's awesome to go second.
Yeah, it's always good to kind of lead into it. Actually, reminds me of something I saw a video the other day, and I forget the comedian's name, and I feel bad that I'm forgetting it. But he was talking about the late Norm Macdonald, and they were together on a show, and he was, Norm was this guy's idol and all that stuff. They got to work together and all of that, and they were both going to be on Larry King Live, and before they went out, the other comedian was going to start first, and then Norm was going to finish up. So Norm's like, it'd be good. It's like we go out there, and then you just go out there and you tell me how horrible of a person I am, and I'm the worst comedian ever, and I'm not funny, and just go on. So that's what that comedian did. He went on there and talked to Larry King and talked about, how horrible Norm was and all that stuff. So then Norm comes up secondly, and just him and Larry, and Larry says, well, tell me about this guy. And Norm goes, he was the he's the greatest comedian, one of the greatest comedians and greatest people I've ever worked with. Because Norm told him he was going to be mean back to him, but he completely did the 180 on him, and he did that intentionally. So he's like, okay, I just railed Norm Macdonald, and he just said I'm the greatest ever. And it's like, oh, yeah. So it pays to go second for sure. But
Oh,
the your company, become more and appropriately named, because one of the things that I want for people is I want them to be the best version of them, whether it's an individual or a company. There's always room for growth and improvement because life always throws us opportunities to become more and be better. And I from a society standpoint, we deserve better companies and better individuals
we do.
because and we see too often, companies just they don't do that. They kind of limp along or they coast or whatever or whatever type of descriptor you want to use. And it saddens me because we lose out on great stuff because companies are doing that, and there's a myriad of reasons why. So, love to hear your approach on that and how how you reach out to clients and how they find you. And I'm sure it's a combination thereof. But my hunch is if they're reaching out to you, they're either wanting to be better or they're doing it because they realize if they don't, they're going to go by the wayside. So, hand it over to you guys to share what you think about that.
Yeah, Michael, I love this because part of what you're talking about is what we would call the status quo. We accept some level, which might be a good level or a mediocre level or a bad level. We accept that and we just kind of ease into it and just allow that to happen. And the reality is, when we allow that to happen, even when we're doing great things, someone is going to pass you. And so if you're not always looking at how can we evolve, mature, move forward, at some point, even if you're currently making dust, you will be eating dust at some point.
It's true. And the side of that, if you think about it, is people traditionally shift off of the status quo because they are inspired or because they're in dire trouble, right? Inspiration or desperation. And when you're desperate, there is this piece where it's like you'll do almost anything. And it's hard to work with an organization that is in that spot because time and fear are kind of knocking on the door, and it gets louder and louder and louder, and they're freaking out in that spot. Inspiration is a much better place to be. And yet, many of us don't make those changes because we're inspired. Many of us make those changes until we can, we wait until we can hear that knock on the door. And that is, that's not, it's unfortunate in that particular space. So one of the things that we actually work with people on is we talk with them and say, all right, we can talk about pain. What's the stuff that's not working for your organization? But let's also talk about gain. What is it that you want to be? What is that? If you could dream for a little bit, what would that look like? And what would be the things that you would like to see and experience, and the way that you would like to interact with customers, and the way that your staff interacts with one another, and the products that you would want to bring out, or the production, and how would that flow? And when we ask them about dreaming, and sometimes I can't use that word, it depends on the CEO and whether that word is comfortable for them or not. But when they can like vision out or dream into that future, that's a way that we get people to be inspired instead of waiting for that time period where something's knocking on the door and they have to do something.
When the water's coming in, a lot of times, like, so, what do you think about this? All they're thinking about is that water, and they're not going to have the clarity to be able to dream or imagine a different future because all they see is the water rising, and they're like, okay, this is problematic. It's like, so you end up becoming a disaster recovery type of place, like those companies that come in after floods or fires and do a
Right.
restoration, get you back to the state, and then it's like, okay, and I see this all the time. They're like, okay, you're recovered, and they're like, okay, we're good. No, you're not. You're back to where you were before that happened, and unless you do something, that's going to happen again. It's like if you have a foundation, your house that always leaks, and the rainstorms come in during rainy season and floods your basement out, and you dry it all up. It's like, okay, we're all good. No, you're not. You just cleaned up. It's the situation is still there. You're going to have to do the foundation work on that, and too often, like, nah, I'll deal with it later, and then later shows up, and well, guess what? They're grabbing the mop buckets again. And I see that time and time again because we're creatures of habit, and status quo, or comfort avenue, as I like to call it, is a very, very dangerous place to hang out in. You can visit it, maybe stop by, grab a cup of coffee, but don't camp out there because it'll pass you by. And, a stat that I'm sure you've heard of, and, I share from time to time too, is from the year 2000, 52% of the Fortune 500 companies in the year 2000 are gone or were
Right.
acquired. So
Yep.
500 of the most biggest companies on the planet, from a public traded standpoint anyway, are gone. So, and what happened to those? You could look at them and you could pretty much say, yep, they went this way because of this or this or this or this, but I, I would all but guarantee that every one of them was in status quo mode or was not as good as they could have been, and they could have prevented that. And eh, I just think about, the impact of an organization of those sizes leaving town or closing up shop or whatnot. But that could be small businesses too. Small business that has 40 employees, they close down in a local community. What does that do to the community? All of a sudden, those are 40 families that aren't going to your restaurants or buying from your local shops or things like that. And it just has a huge ripple effect. And again, a lot of it could be prevented if, they work with, individuals like yourselves that can say, okay, what can we do to get better, grow, be a better version of ourselves, because what works today in all likelihood is not going to work tomorrow as well as it could. So, and it's one of those things where, again, you see it all the time. I do too. It's like these companies are like, no, we're good. No, you're not. You're not. I'm sorry. I'm not. One of my favorite quotes is from the late Chuck Daly, former coach of the Detroit Pistons, Team USA, that won the gold medal way back when, and this was after the Pistons. I forget who they beat, but they beat them one game like 30 something points. It was an absolute blowout. And at the post game, Chuck's just mouthing off on all the missed plays the Pistons had and how they screwed this up and that up. And the reporter finally said, Chuck, you guys won by 30. You were up like 45 at one point. Why are you so pessimistic? And he said, a pessimist is an optimist with experience. And he knew that the players that were screwing up and missing plays, that could come back and bite them down the road. He didn't want to see it. And you guys see it all the time, in companies. It's like you're doing some things that's going to bite you down the road.
We have something we incorporate in our organization, but it's something we bring to every other organization that we talk to as well. And it's called the growth questions.
Yeah. So it's really looking at it and say, what worked? What didn't work? What are we going to go do differently? And the more frequent you're asking yourself those questions, the more you will grow. And Michael, as you were sharing, it made me think about there is this. I have immediate pain. The water's coming in and I need to solve that. And I really can't think of anything else. Okay, I've now solved that and I'm moving on. That is a challenge. Like I think we've all experienced that.
Yep.
The one that is the most interesting to me is okay, I really don't have water coming in. And yeah, we're not perfect. We want to be better. However, man, it's a lot of work. And I can't take myself out of the day to day to actually think about what the future is going to hold and like set aside the buzz, the bees and bugs flying around, because it's not like I have dead carcasses. It's just the noise of the day. And watching leaders not take the time to slow down, think, start to look at the future, what could be. And it's this piece of they get in this status quo or a rut. And my dad said one to me one time, the only difference between a rut and a grave is dimensions. And that has always stuck with me that, okay, if we're in this place and I'm just sucked into the day to day, how do I take myself out of that? How do I have the mental fortitude to slow down and think about, I need to be thinking out there as a leader and step out of the day to day because I'm constantly being sucked in the day to day. How do we become more? How do we grow our team? How do we satisfy our customers or achieve our mission or whatever it is that we're trying to accomplish?
And a mistake that we sometimes make when we dream is that we try to find the one big right answer. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to try to hit this big home run. And actually, breaking the status quo is more incremental than it is making one big bet. And so it is this thing that says you don't have to say, I'm going to go and put all my apples in one basket. I am going to say in this spot, hey, I'm looking, I want to be more. I think we can grow. I think there's an opportunity. Let's go do these little tests. Let's try some stuff. And as we try some stuff, by the way, trying stuff actually brings energy into an organization. People get excited, and especially when it's like, we have to do this perfect. That's the one big home run versus let's just try it and see what happens. And so we try, we see what happens, we learn. And that's when those growth questions really come in, right? What's working? What's not working? What could we do? Let's go try those things. Let's see. And then let's make the next decision. It's not so scary then. And it pushes us out of being in that rut or that grave because we're trying some small incremental things that we can manage and we can, in that space, we're not betting the farm on it. And let the information from that help us make better and better bets as we move forward.
It's like the improve by 1% kind of
Right.
mentality. It's just a little increment. A lot of people, 1%, oh, that's easy. Maybe.
No.
Maybe it's not, but we don't tell them that because we want them at least to try.
It's
Because
true.
otherwise, like, oh, 1%, I don't know. But it's the little stuff, and you stop and you pause and reflect, and it's where meditation in a way. The pause and reflect is meditation. A lot of leaders say, "Well, I can't meditate." And I said, "Well, do you ever reflect on things and think about how a project went or some ideas of what you want to do in Q3 or Q4?" "Oh yeah, all the time." I hate to spoil it to you, but you're meditating, and it scares them because they're figuring some yogi's going to come and hit them over the back of the head, But it's like, no, that's not going to happen. Well, I can't promise that. Likelihood is not going to happen, but depending on where you happen to be, anything's possible in this world. But ultimately, and I love that way to do it. It's like let's look for the momentum. It's little
Right.
steps. It's one step here, one step there. Using the baseball analogy, it's like you have a really successful inning. Yeah, you could be hitting a bunch of home runs. That's fine, but base hit after base hit after base hit, it's like body jabs. It just wears them down, and then the pitcher ends up leaving one right over the middle of the plate, and then it's about 520 feet out in right field, and it's like, oh, okay, now we've had a 7-run inning here, and you've just beaten them down. But it's just those little incremental things that add up, and it's pausing and reflecting too. I worked for a company. It's alarming how many years ago it was. But it was one of the first companies ever. Well, it was 20. Oh my gosh, when was that? Yeah, 26 years ago. Yikes, that's yeah.
Lifetime.
You tell me about it. Yeah, there's like a lifetime, and that lifetime could have started having a family lifetime. That's how long ago it was. Um, but it was a company, Fortune 500 organization, and it was a division, and we were in asset management, and we went out and did asset management work for other Fortune 500 companies. And at the end of every project, we would have a project debrief meeting, which is not out of the norm,
Right.
but we always brought in a handful of other project managers and team members from other projects to sit in on the meeting that had nothing to do with the project. They never opened up a single spreadsheet or look at a presentation slide. They had no knowledge about it other than when they walked in the room, and we'd go through and all of that, and those people that were outside would offer some insights and things that they did, that helped streamline some things and lessons learned. So basically it was like a team meeting where everybody kind of contributed. Well, what we ended up doing by doing that is, after implementing that new procedure, within about 6 months, we were able to increase the number of clients that we took on by 20%, and we
Wow.
didn't we didn't hire any additional advisors. Needless to say, and I'm not going to mention the company, but headquarters in Germany were really pleased about efficiency. Not that Germans are all about efficiency or anything like that. I know it might be a breaking news alert there. Didn't mean to shock people on that. But they were thrilled, and they're like, "What did you do?" They're trying to figure out, can we mimic this? And again, that was an example. Okay, there's
Right.
something we learned. Could that be applied in other arenas that we work on to find the ability to do more without overloading people and with the same amount of people? And it was one of those things where I was obviously much younger then, didn't pay much attention to it, but upon reflecting, looking back, thinking about ideas, it's like that was great. So anywhere that I was a leader, didn't matter what role I was in, I did that. I would bring in some
Right.
outsiders and say, okay, well, what's your thoughts on this? What do you see? And it just improved things. And it was a simple
Mhm.
thing to implement. A lot of people thought I was crazy at first. Like, well, they weren't on the project. Why are they here? Like, you'll see. Just work with me on this. And then they realized, and then all of a sudden they wanted to be part of other meetings, probably because they didn't want to work and they just want to sit in the meeting. But uh,
Oh yeah, because people love meetings, Michael.
yeah, my brother, and this was years ago too, worked for an auto sector company, and you'll get this. They actually had a meeting to determine why they had so many meetings,
Of
and
course.
and
Makes
the, and the,
complete sense.
they didn't come up with a solution. So,
Because it was an ineffective meeting. There you
yeah,
go.
yeah. Is there an agenda? Could this be an email? Do I need to be there? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like,
I
yeah.
do like that methodology that you're talking about, outside eyes. I mean, it's great, especially if you have enough internal staff to be able to have an outside perspective. That's phenomenal. If you don't, that's what you kind of need consultants about, right? Because an outside perspective says, I don't have any skin in the game. Here's just something to think about and consider. It's not like you did this wrong and you did this wrong. It's not like an audit. It's this thing that says, here's something that you might want to consider. Here's something that we've done. This is what our experience says. And that's how you get better incrementally, but you do it very quickly. And so that's what's really interesting about that. That is growth, very specific, a growth plan to help us see what we can do differently and not just get stuck in, well, this is the way we do it. Well, it worked last time, we'll do it this time.
And having the outside in, whether that's a consultant or whether that's someone from the next department over,
Right?
ideally, like they have the ability to ask the quote dumb questions that we just make the assumptions on. We assume we do it this way because it's the best way. But having someone say, well, why? I was with a financial organization and they were talking about, oh yeah, when we do mortgage work, they like if you pay, you have the ability, you could pay every 2 weeks, and actually that reduces your overall interest, etc. Well, when someone chooses to do that, they have to take that money and put it in an account and then wait until they have a full payment. And I'm like, so they're like double, triple work that they're having to do. And I'm like, help me understand why. And they all look at me like, what do you mean why? It's what we're supposed to do. I'm like, yeah, I understand that's what you're supposed to do. Help me understand. You have made the decision to do that, or there's a legal, regulatory reason to do that. And there is actually a legal, regulatory reason to do that to make it compliant if they want to sell it on the outside market versus a car, a consumer loan, a car loan or something. You could make $1 payment every day and that will be applied. And it's so interesting, like the process hoops they have to do. However, they have never thought of, like, in their mind, it's just like, well, we just do this. And it's just normal. Like, why are you even asking? Well, because number one, I don't know, because it sounds really stupid.
And Michael, you don't know about us, but we have an acronym that we use. It's SLL, stay stupid. Sorry, I did that totally wrong. It's SSL, stay stupid longer. And that place where you stay stupid longer and keep asking questions, seeking to understand, helps us to actually innovate. It helps us to make those incremental changes. It helps us be better. And that's one of the great skill sets of being a leader, not just a consultant. When you have staff, right? Don't give them the answer. Stay stupid longer and help them figure it out. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's great. And I think too, and this is something that a lot of leaders, they struggle with initially. The great ones figure it out much sooner than I did, is, you know, your people in all likelihood are much smarter than you are when it comes to something that they're working on. So let them be that, and let them uh, show and give them the autonomy to be able to create and come up with some ideas,
Yes.
because they're seeing things that you're not, and vice versa. You see things as a leader, you're going to get exposed to things that your front lines may not be aware of. What you share, I mean, obviously share as much as you can so everybody can kind of be rowing in the same direction. But there's opportunities where it's like, okay, I'm not seeing this. What am I not seeing here? And especially if you're going through, it doesn't matter if you're going through a growth stage or a retraction stage. Like, what am I not seeing here? What do you think? What's going on? And this is one of those things that's like, I know you talked about this with your spouse or your partner back home. I know this. What's their insight on that? And and don't worry, they're not here. I won't tell them you said anything, but what are they saying? And be frank. Use the profanity if you want to. I'm from Detroit. We've heard bad words before. Don't worry about it. So what do you need? And again, it's more perspectives can sometimes it can open up that particular sliver of an idea that can spawn off into something absolutely amazing, or turn the tide to make things even better for everybody involved. So before we wrap up, a question that came to mind while we were talking is, here we are in Q1 of 2025, and in the last few years, I'm sure have been, what's the word, interesting, I guess, for your clients, and because it's been interesting for all of us. But what are some things that you're seeing that customers are, or your clients are doing, whether it's something they're struggling with or something that they're looking to do? I'm just curious on that, because I want my audience to kind of hear some things and maybe shed some light and give them some ideas on some things that they're working on. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think we're seeing, if I think of a couple themes that are common. One is they're really looking at their organization and saying, are we designed correctly to achieve what we need to achieve? And that could be anything from reporting structure to our processes, like our processes clear and well defined, so we know where are we getting the most value, for our customers and for the organization. I think that's one. I'm still seeing many leaders say, how do I grow the next set of leaders, the next set of folks that we need to lead? And I think then the third thing is, how am I building a relationship with my team so that they understand me, I understand them, like because it allows me to grow and coach and get those better outcomes. So to me, those are the three kind of buckets of things that I'm seeing organization kind of double down on right now.
I think there's also this piece in the relationship side of this, where it is really understanding that if we don't build a culture where people have the ability to contribute, we are not getting the best and the brightest to work for us. Once we have someone working for us, they're not giving what they are capable of giving. And when they actually, you know, um, quietly quit is the kind of the term that has been people have been talking about for years. We're paying them, but they don't even feel satisfied, right? And in that spot, if they're not satisfied and bringing their best and like being excited about how they can contribute, then that organization doesn't grow. So this thing about relationship and culture and getting out of the way of our folks so that they can be brilliant instead of me taking all of that on and being egotistical as that leader, that piece, we're having a lot of those conversations as well, and that really does fit with that leadership piece, and it does fit with that growing piece. I think we kind of felt like we had to stick with the status quo with the last few years and the things that have happened, and what we're finding is that that's not satisfying and it's not healthy. And so those are the areas that we're seeing people really talk about to get themselves out of it.
It gives me a lot of hope that those are the things that people are seeking guidance on, because it shows it at minimum an openness
Right.
to maybe be a little bit more vulnerable and learn a little bit more about um, the emotional side of things of work, and creating opportunities for people to be their best and be
Right.
creative. And we know there's multiple generations that are in the workforce now, and Gen Alpha is well on its way next. So you've got the baby boomers who are going to be here for the next 300 years. That's a joke. I'm Gen X, so that's a joke.
I'm a boomer. I'm gonna be
Yeah,
here
yeah.
forever.
You guys will not let go. Let go. No, I'm
I'm
kidding.
sorry.
I'm kidding. No,
We'll let go when you all figure it out.
Oh, in your face,
well,
Michael.
well played. Well played. Because we won't. No, I think, and completely different tangent. I think a big, obviously there's, a variety of different reasons why, but I think from, I baby boomers actually enjoy work.
It's
Uh,
sickening, and it's true. I am a perfect example of that, Michael.
they,
Sorry.
well, it's in many cases, you're an artist, but your paintbrush is not necessarily a paintbrush. You're an
Right.
artist, and I see that with every generation. They every generation is creative in their own way, and ideally is, and if Jonathan Shepard's listening to this, so shout out to him because he does a lot of legal work and works with different generations on different things. It's when you take all of those skills and you put it together and you let it mesh and form into this ecosystem, that's when you see some absolutely superb organizations. And I know
It's a
that's,
beautiful thing.
oh, it's literally you take it back and go. You want to, in a way you want to bottle it up. You want to go and say, oh wow, how does this work? It's like because it works. And I know that's a very simplistic answer, but there's a lot of ingredients to it. But it's by design that it does that. So I've loved this
Indeed.
conversation. We could talk for hours on this. So where can people find about you guys, and would you like them to check out?
Yeah, easy, three places. Easy. One is our website, BecomeMoreGP.com. Or if you're like, hey, I want something specific, you can email us at BecomeMore@BecomeMoreGP.com. Or if you want to hear some more of our rants and raves, you can listen to our podcast, The Leadership Line, on your favorite podcast thingy.
There you go.
Thingy.
Yes, thingy. Yes, I'll definitely have the links to all those thingies in the show notes. So, really appreciate you, Scott and Tammy. Thank you so much for being awesome people and the amazing work you're doing that makes the world a better place. So, really appreciate your time today.
Thank you,
All right, thanks,
Michael.
Michael.